So those of you who don't know me, I am Andrea Johannes. I sit as a senior account manager. I was recently promoted. That's why I always miss the senior bit of my title at Accenture Song, and we called ourselves the earned media department. I also sit as part of the PRCA NextGen board within our Africa region. And I'm joined by Morten and David, who are previous winners. And I know that there's quite a few of us on here who have entered the competition. So I think it's important that we kind of give people advice. We impart some knowledge because we all know this can be a very daunting kind of exercise to go through, and with one more day left to enter, I think it's a good kind of encouraging step to get people to come on board and actually take that next step and actually enter the qualifiers. I'm going to read David and Morten's bio that I've actually got on hand. I love reading a bio that somebody sends me because I think somebody describing themselves in their own words is so important. So I'll do Morten's first. So it says Morten Vester Haldrup. He is the co-chair of the ICCO board. Morten works as an advisor in PR and corporate communications at Advice, one of the largest communication agencies in Denmark. With a love of languages and a keen interest in politics and media, he's involved in all aspects of campaign planning, whether it concerns creating content or developing a strategy, or checking grammar for that matter. Morten won gold in the 2022 ICCO NextGen PR World Cup with his partner Sophie. He has a master's degree in rhetoric from the University of Copenhagen and a background as a military linguist and reserve officer in the Danish army with 3 deployments to Afghanistan. I'm going to read David's bio. David Gyampo. David, I hope I'm not butchering your surname over there. David works as an account manager at Razor PR in Johannesburg, the most awarded PR agency in Africa and from Africa. He holds a master's degree in public relations and corporate communications from New York University, or NYU, as most people know, and a bachelor's degree in internal affairs from Skidmore College. David won silver in the 2023 ICCO NextGen PR World Cup with his partner Zara. In his role, David crafts and executes effective media and stakeholder engagement strategies for leading corporate brands like Anglo American, Investec Life, BDO South Africa, and the Core Group. His passion for international development, combined with his interest in capital markets, drive his ambition for finding innovative ways in which corporate communications can bring key stakeholders together to drive effective social change. Beautiful bios. So I'm not going to ponder or waffle too hard. I think David and Morten, I don't know, from your bio, is there anything additional that you want to share, or are you happy for me to proceed to the first question? Happy? Stunning. Okay, so in wanting to kind of understand and make people comfortable and at ease, we thought a great first question would be, what were the biggest challenges that you faced in working with an NGO that you had no or little prior knowledge to or of before the competition? And how quickly did you get up to speed on their goals and values to align and develop a campaign? I'm going to give to Morten first. Morten is a little bit of our legacy winner. And then David, you can just respond to the exact same question.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrea. So I think we spent a lot of time when we won the World Cup. The case was, or the client was, the World Wildlife Foundation, with the panda logo. And even though we both knew them, me and my partner, we spent a lot of time of actually significant part of the time on like looking into their private or their prior campaigns and what they'd done previously, like looking through their sites and so on, and then actually try to measure that, like their existing communications up against the stated goals in the brief, just to see where, like, did they align or did they actually need something differently? And I mean, we actually ended up not necessarily like going against the brief, but we actually went a different way than what they've done previously. Like one of the things what we suggested that they shouldn't like do anything with nature in the campaign because that's how people know them, and they needed to do something completely different. So that we used it to sort of like dive into the creative idea and where we wanted to go with the campaign.
Awesome. I think it's so key also specifically with these bigger organizations that kind of have a world kind of brand reach. It's also particularly difficult to break down what they initially or intricately have as part of their brand identity. So to get a brief like that must have been, quite overwhelming, because you think to yourself, has this brand or has this company done something that, I'm wanting to suggest to them to do. But I think it's interesting that you went and you turned the brief on its head. I think that's quite important because, many different people, we sit across the boards, we have different kind of values, belief systems, which all kind of drive our ideas and content creation and thought creation and production. David, would you care to share a little bit of your side and kind of what your kind of initial entrance into the competition was?
Yeah, of course. Thank you as well for having me, guys. So on my end, well, on me and my partners end, we had, and I'll speak from the Africa perspective specifically because that was the actual NGO that we had no idea about. For the World Cup competition, we had the UN, which is, everybody knows the UN, but for the Africa competition, we were tasked with handling a solving a communications problem for the Kujali Foundation. I had no idea what that was, who that was. They were, so from our research, we found out that they were firstly, they were a Francophone organization based in Francophone West Africa, which kind of like, we, as being in a South African company, which does deal with other African entities, this was kind of difficult because we were completely going outside of our geography, into even different language and different people groups. So that was very interesting. I think what we did to solve that, or what we did to really try and understand that, was to we did quite a lot in terms of just, we delved into even some of the social media that mostly, I guess more francophone people would watch, the some of the influences that they would look at. We also just really did extensive research on the foundation, just to make sure that we had everything in a row. So something about these competitions is, I think deliberately some of the briefs are not exactly fully, they're not fully fledged. They're intentionally made to be a bit vague so that you'll be able to figure out the rest for yourself, which is a great challenge because not all clients, especially in the PR world, will give a good brief. So that is something that really helped us to hone that talent, to hone that
Yeah.
skill, really focusing on our research capabilities outside of what we were used to, and that really helped us to understand the brief some more.
Yeah, I often say, I think what makes a really good public relations individual is curiosity. And if you have this need and this thirst for wanting to find out more, and you could get a brief like this and really immerse yourself in the world, in the culture, in the belief systems, in the traditions of wherever that brand exists, it's kind of key in order to kind of bring about a brief or suggest a campaign that aligns as closely to their values and their brand beliefs as possible. So I love that. I love that you took something and you were like, this is scary, but let me be curious about it. Let me teach myself about it. And I'm sure you and your partner kind of did a deep dive into everything that exists within the region and understanding, what are the nuances of the social media, of the earned media in that space, of the paid media as well. So thank you so much for that. And I think that's a good segue into our next question, which is, it's a very high pressure environment. So how did you, David, prioritize your tasks and manage your time management to essentially deliver that high quality kind of campaign idea?
It's a very good question. The way we managed our time was barely manageable, if I could say that. It was because of how quickly the brief, is given to us and the short amount of time that we're given. We had to be so aggressive, blocking out time in our diaries. I mean, it didn't come against client work, thankfully, but we blocked out about 30 minutes, which we thought that 30 minutes would work, blocking out 30 minutes each day to do this. It didn't work out. We always ended up going to maybe about an hour, of our time. But that was how it was. We had to be super intentional with our time, especially in the high pressure. And also, I think what we came up with, or what we came to the conclusion, was that it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to answer, what was given. And that's because the judges also recognize that this is a time sensitive thing.
Yeah.
But are you answering the brief is the main part of what we kept in our hands.
Exactly. And I think that's something that I think is scary for a lot of people. I know people from my agency have asked me, why 48 hours? But I think the challenge is there to kind of use that PR muscle that you have now kind of been trained up with, be curious, like you said, be intentional about it, set that time aside. And don't try and make it bigger than it is. Oftentimes we take a brief and we turn it into this massive mountain when all we have to do is kind of solve how do we kind of fix the molehill. David, would you say in terms of like Morten, would you say in terms of like high pressure environments, when you and your partner had to go kind of and look at this brief, was it a lot of the similar kind of intentions and feelings that you had?
I think so, yeah. I think we were, both of us, I'll probably have to say that we, like the way it worked in Denmark, because it's such a small country and region, we were paired across like agencies to represent Denmark. So I had to work with someone I'd never met before, which it turned out fine. But I think the system we sort of developed was to sort of like we would work on different things, and then we would like switch around. Like if I was doing the creative stuff and I'd sort of like come into a corner, we would like do a switch, and then she would take over in the creative stuff and I'd work on the strategy. And I think that's just to like echo David's point of like time being short, obviously. I think that worked out for us to sort of like get a fresh perspective on things, and we could like in that sense we could sort of comment on each other's work like while we were working on it, instead of like having a lot of meetings, sit downs throughout the day. So I think that's at least something I can recommend, that you can sort of like take turns and then switch around to sort of keep the momentum going and not like work yourself out.
Yeah, I love that, because I think oftentimes you get so stuck in the ideation part of briefs, thinking about it. Oh, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that. But we actually don't put things into action. And again, another segue into, and Morten, you spoke a little bit about it, how did you balance creativity and strategy within that 48-hour deadline? Was it, like you said, you and your partner divided and conquered? Was it, and I can't even imagine, because, if they're working in a different agency, to me, it's like, your entire way of work is completely different. So how did you kind of balance creativity and strategy? Was it something that you kind of divvied up and said, oh, I'm the creative one, I will do the kind of creative aspects? Or was it, no, let's work together and kind of do something that we're both proud of and something that we both want to take forward to the judges?
We actually like we met like a couple of days before the competition started and just had a coffee and talked through, and we early on decided that we would rather create something we were proud of instead of something that we thought might appeal to the judges. So we were both like aligned on like willingness to take a risk. And I think like sort of creativity versus strategy, I think we quickly noticed, or we sort of like found our roles, that she'd done a lot more strategic work than I'd done, and now I was like more into coming up with creative ideas. So we sort of found our natural rhythm, but we also were pretty open about that we needed to be able to be like brutally honest with one another on like, because you don't have time to sort of like use 3 sentences to say you're not aligned with something, and just say, no, I don't think this works, and then you can sort of like move on. And I think that was key for us. I think for us, we spend a lot of the research time sort of like unpacking what is the issue that we want to address, and then when we landed on our idea, it's sort of like it got the ball rolling, and then we could easily see like the strategy unfold. But I think you can easily do it the other way around. like
Yeah.
focusing on what steps do we want to include in the strategy, and then the focus on that aspect. So I think it sort of depends on what type of team you are, like where you see your strengths.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I like that. I think it's so key that something that you said stuck out to me. It's oftentimes, we all work in this communication space together, but we want to tiptoe around each other and want to tiptoe around each other's feelings and ideas, etc. So you don't want to say a mean word. But I think, if teams can go into this being not brutally honest, but definitely, some form of honest with each other, it will allow for both parties to be happy, to, like you say, put something forward that you both are genuinely proud of. David, I've got a kind of follow up for you. So for your team, I know that you were saying, you didn't want to kind of blow up the brief too much. So did your team focus on more innovative ideas, or was kind of the goal or the mandate for you on delivering a clear and actionable plan?
So I'll say this. Initially, we were blowing up the idea a lot. And in the process, we learned about the fact that calm down and just answer the question, right? And in that process, we're able to divvy up who does what. I'm a very pragmatic thinker. I'm creative in other ways, but I think that in terms of PR approach, I really love, like, let me get the research, let me translate it into like English. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of the approach I took. We kind of siloed it based on what Morten was saying before, like people focusing on their strengths, right? I went fully strategy and just tried to bring out the idea from the different data points that we had. And my partner really went all in with the creative. And what happened was that when we brought it together, and we of course we worked with each other, talking to each other, and that really helped bring out the idea. But at the end of the day, when we all brought it together, it was brilliant, and it worked really well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a token to that is, being able to kind of pass through the qualifiers. I think that's super, it's attributed to that. So, David, while I have you, I think another kind of question that we need to ask is, how do you ensure that whatever you're doing kind of stands out from the rest of the competition? The 48 hours is not a long time. So, you have to dig deep, yes, but, are there any tips and tricks that you and your team member had done that you can kind of share with our people that are wanting to enter, in terms of how you thought, this is going to kind of set me apart from the rest of my competition?
I'll tell you exactly what we did to stand out, and what the judges ended up saying was the reason we won. We, instead of just like a regular presentation, we allotted like a minute and a half for a video that we did of like a promotional campaign, a promotional campaign video for the idea that we brought up. So it was like almost like a documentary. So our idea was an app, a wellness app, and that was the promotional video for the app. And in that video, I ended up speaking French at the end, to just also appeal to our audience a bit more. Apparently, that was the game changer for us. In that sense, the reason, I guess, how we came up with that, or why we wanted to do that, was not just because it was just our team, me and my partner. We also had the agency behind us, really, really supporting and offering themselves and their different expertise to it. So we had a lot of brainstorm sessions together with the people that work with us, and they are the ones who came up with the idea, like, why don't we just go a little further than just answering the brief. Let's do this little creative edge, add a little creative edge to it, because that, and true to form, that is exactly what made this stand out. So I would say just bringing other people in as well, and running ideas and making sure that it sticks to not just you, so that it's not an echo chamber. You have
Yeah.
other people who are able to contribute to that as well. So that's how we.
Yeah, and I like the use of different media forms or different, content forms, because I think sometimes we get so stuck and we've got these kind of horse blinders on us, and we like think, oh no, we have to do something exactly as per how the brief says, without that creative flair, or without thinking about, what other formats can I utilize, can I pull from? Morten, would you say that that was kind of a lot in terms of the alignment, in terms of your thinking, in setting you and your team apart from the rest of the competition?
I think so. Yeah, we like I said, previously, we early on sort of decided that we both want to like take a risk, but we also like in our research of like the existing communication of WWF, we sort of landed on okay, they're asking for something they can achieve with like the way they're communicating right now. So we have to respectfully and politely say that you have to do something completely different. And then we actually focused like the majority of like our limited amount of time and slides to sort of focus on like convincing them of going on board with the idea. And I think that's sort of the not only do you have to sort of like analyze the target group that the campaign wants to target, but also in a sense analyze the client in okay, would this idea be require some extra time for them to sort of digest and come on like be convinced of. And at least that was the way we sort of said, okay, we need to spend a majority of the time making sure that they're on board with the idea, because when they if they're on board with the idea, they can easily like follow on with the next couple of slides and say, "Oh yeah, of course you're gonna do then this and this and this." I don't know if that answered the question, but I think that was sort of like our take that we would like certain that we would need some extra time to sort of get them on board with the idea and not just say that okay, we have 45 seconds per slide and we're going to use 45 seconds per slide and go through it.
Yeah, no, I 100% like that, because I think it's something, because you have such limited time, such limited slides, you kind of want to get through all of it without actually taking that time to think about, are the judges following along? Are they understanding what I'm wanting to kind of, does this appeal to them? I think sometimes because we have this limited amount of time, limited amount of slides to be able to kind of bring across something that's a big idea, we often kind of overlook that step in terms of giving them a proper introduction into whatever it is that we're trying to display. But I think on that, Morten, I think it's important to also ask you, when you got that brief, what did that day look like for you? What resources did you kind of look up first? I know for me it would be Google. you start with Google and you go work your way down a rabbit hole. But is there anything, some tips or tricks? And obviously it's dependent on whatever brief the teams get. But are there any kind of universal tips or tricks that you kind of can share with us that you have done that help contribute to your success?
I don't know if there were that many tools. I think the other than Google and like going through prior campaigns and stuff like that. We and I think that was probably specific to our brief. We used Google Ingram Viewer because we wanted to. It was like the crisis was about deforestation, or the brief was about deforestation, and we sort of looked up that like deforestation. Well, it sort of peaked in the 90s. Like talks about deforestation, and we sort of compare that with climate change. That you could just see like climate change, like sort of dwarfing deforestation, and we sort of use that to say, okay, like deforestation isn't top of mind, that we all think about climate change and not deforestation, and we sort of use that as like a key element in sort of the way we argued for our case.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably specific to our brief. But yeah, other than that, I don't think I have that many many tools. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I think for those that are watching, I think one that I love to, just in my day-to-day, if a client is tasking me with a particularly difficult brief, is famous campaigns. They've got a section where you can go climate change or a lifestyle or whatever kind of campaigns you want to look at. And I think it's a phenomenal resource to get this is what others have done. How can I take this and make it my own? How can I take this and create a bigger brief that is more related to my brand, NGO, whatever it is. So I particularly love Google, and I like famous campaigns. David, yeah, sorry, Morten, go ahead.
Yeah, it was just like what you mentioned, that we actually did spend a lot of time on not just like looking at other like climate change NGOs, but like looking at like NGOs in other different like sectors, like what they done, which speak to the same audience, but like on a different topic to sort of broaden the scope and not just look on the sector specific or issue specific type of
Yeah, it actually brings up something one of our creative strategists often says to me at Accenture, he often says to me, you have to take something that exists within a different space and try and emulate it into another space, right? So, for example, we look at Spotify doing the Spotify Wrapped. How can you do a Spotify Wrapped for a tourism company? How can you do a Spotify Wrapped for, a different big brand? And I think it's about, seeing what's out there and potentially not reinventing the wheel, but really taking something that somebody thought couldn't relate as closely to your brief or your NGO or your brand, and kind of turning it on its head. And so that's kind of the alignment that I'm getting from you and your team, Morten. David, would you say there's any one particular or two particular resources that you and your partner had used, bar Google?
I'm so sorry to disappoint because I feel like we're all Googlers here, man. I would say honestly, it was a bit of a, like I said, a bit of a mixed bag. We because of the nature of our brief, which really focused on youth and the digital, us being digital narratives, a lot of information, a lot of data. Sorry, it was youth, mental health, and like the digital narratives narrative. So a lot of information that we got was from the World Bank. A lot of information that we got was from GSM, the global mobile communications network. And like literally, like these are like data hubs where you would get information about what you're talking about. Like I said, I was very, very, very data heavy, so like I don't mind doing all that stuff. But I think in that sense of the word, I think it should be, especially even given the limited time, I think people should really make sure that they are putting in the work in trying to find the deeper information, because in that you will get the insights that will maybe make your work stand out compared to people who do just like pretty base level work, and that was really helpful for our team, because the stats that we were given in our brief, we were able to add onto, which gave the client, or at least the client, more insights than they even had. So that was really, really helpful for us. Yeah.
And I suppose it assists with the credibility of whatever you are kind of wanting to put forth. It shows, I know who I'm talking about. I understand the brand. I understand this NGO. I understand the problem that I'm needing to solve by doing something like this. So I think that's also key. And David, I think you said something so important now. You said to all the teams, take that time, go and do the research, do a deep dive. But in that space and in that 48 hours of you getting the brief, was there anything that now you sit back and you go, if I had to go back, I would have changed this, or if I had to go back, I would have changed that? Is there any one particular thing that you're like, I would have done this differently?
I thinking about it now, not really in terms of the way we did it, our approach maybe, because I think like Morten said, my teammate and I were in the same agency, although we were separated by geography. Morten had a different challenge. It was a completely different agency, but that was particularly difficult to navigate. I mean, of course, not Zoom, we use Teams. And things like that was easy to do, but in terms of just being on the ball and on the money, because sometimes an idea comes to you and you're not just gonna dial in somebody to get that. So I do wish it would have been somebody that was here within the Johannesburg office, but otherwise it would, yeah, no, it wasn't, I wouldn't change much honestly compared to what we did.
Yeah, and I think it's like the learning for you from that could have potentially been like geography, yes, was a challenge, but it didn't make for, a complete dead stop. Like you were not able to complete something. So I think that that's also key. You learned that you were able to across geographies. And I mean, to be able to produce something that's award winning is important, but then the fact that you did it with the compound of the challenges that came with that, I think that's impeccable. Morten, would you say one of your challenges and one of the things that you may be looking back now and thinking, maybe I would have done that differently, was it also in alignment with your partner? Was there any one particular thing from the campaign that you had presented that you like, thinking back now, I don't know if I feel as strongly about it? Or
I'm probably in the same boat as David on this. We've talked about it a couple of times afterwards, and we're actually quite proud of the work we did under the conditions that we we did them. I think and this is more like a time management thing. I think we would have like before we sort of started, we agreed that okay, we need at least to set aside 2 hours to do like the recording that we're going to submit, just to make sure that the like Zoom works and like the sound works and all that kind of stuff. And we ended up needing to push that and ended up like stressing a lot about it. And so that's probably a minor thing, but I will say that it's been really an amazing experience that you really I can't remember if it was you, David, or Andrea, who mentioned that you really get to learn like how much you've learned like using the PR toolbox or whatever in this short amount of time, which is really like motivating going forward, that you're able to come up with basically a whole campaign regardless of what idea you're going in, what
Yeah.
direction in such short amount of time is really like, even if you don't make the cut, that's something to take with you and like
Yeah.
going forward, I'd say.
Yeah. And I think, Morten, on that, you had mentioned, technology and doing a bit of before, make sure that you can, log into the Zooms or log into the Teams and all of that. So I suppose that's kind of one of the like pitfalls of the cross geography, or not being able to work with somebody within your space. But should competitors kind of be shortlisted with the judges, is there any kind of tips or advice that you have for them in particular with the judges, or with that shortlisting?
Yeah, good question. I think like if you can, as a team, like of course it requires you being on par, but I think there's some strength in, and David touched on this as well, sort of challenging the judges or the client or the brief. I mean, of course, if you want to, it's not that you have to. Of course, you have to mean it. But I think there's some strength in that, to sort of like showing them that you can think outside the brief box, and that you sort of have the guts, for lack of a better word, to sort of chase what you as a professional advise or judge is the right way to go forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And I think it kind of touches again on what you said earlier on. It's about, formulating that connection with the judges from the onset, making sure that you are appealing to them, that you're saying something that kind of has either the shock value, or, it shows kind of your legacy knowledge of this brand or NGO or whatever it is that you're kind of going into the final competition with. David, is there anything from your side that you would love to share in terms of helping, when you get to the shortlisted phase of the competition, anything to kind of look out for, any kind of common mistakes that you've seen? Because I know, the presentation is there and it's quite a few teams that present together. Was there any kind of things that you felt that you feel is necessary to tell, the next generation of PRCA NextGen Africa Qualifier teams, that they should kind of be on the lookout for, or be alert on?
I would say the questions that come after the the presentation. It's good to, because you remember that you have 3 days to prepare for this. You tend to, because of the pressure, you tend to forget to prepare for those questions, and just focus on the presentation. I think you should always think about this the judging situation, and think about the most outlandish question. You look at your brief. Also, this is where bringing other people in is helpful, because they'll be able to look at it from a different angle than you've been looking at it for the same 3 days. They'll be able to prep you for those really, really difficult questions that could come up. I will say the judges are not like super harsh or anything. Like, they're very accommodating, but there will always be that challenging question that will make you think a bit on the spot. I will say, to answer, and this is kind of just a tip, if you don't know the answer, you can say that you don't know the answer, and then it's a good way to say it's something that I should consider, something that we'll look into, we will go and do our research about it. And then what you do is also kind of related to a point that you already gave. So
Yeah.
it's really good to do that.
Awesome. David, would you say kind of that the questions and you having to answer at the end of, your presentation was one of the kind of unexpected things or kind of surprising things? And yeah, how do you navigate a system like this? And if you have any tips for anyone going forward? I love the idea that you were saying, if you don't know the answer, say, it's something to consider, it's something that I will note and add to the next presentation, or, good point, thank you for bringing that up, and hopefully you have an answer. But would you say that was kind of a little bit unexpected? And do you have any additional tips for others to help navigate some challenging questions, but also, some unexpected moments that will occur during the qualifiers?
This was a particular challenge or that we had in the beginning was, I believe it was technical. I think it's always something to do with the internet screen or something. I believe I had to change laptops or something. I forget it. It was very quick. But to go back to the thing of questions, I think it's really important, and this is where, of course, also really knowing your presentation comes into it, because, like I said, if you don't know the answer and you say you don't know, you should have something that links to that question still, and that is still able to speak to what the judge put forward. I will say, though, that the most surprising element of the next round going into the actual World Cup, I don't want to speak for Morten or anything, but that was and Morten talked about it, that recording, the recording of the final presentation that you submit to like the final judges, that was ridiculous. I mean, we did how many takes? I think about 6-7 takes before the final product. But that was really, really tough. But I think it's just a thing of consistency and just not giving up. I mean, it sounds very cliche, but you just have to keep going at it until you get it right. And eventually it does come right. You keep cutting eventually, and then you get the right time, and then you submit, and it feels good.
And I suppose every time you go through a different round, in the next round, it becomes a little bit easier, and you kind of build up your confidence. And hopefully, our people listening today can be at the level where you are in terms of the confidence that you now have post the competition. Morten, was there anything unexpected or particularly challenging that you experienced during your time in the competition?
I'm not sure I'd say challenging. I think one thing, because we didn't know each other, my partner and me, like beforehand, we had to, like, working in our profession, requires a lot of trust. Like, if you have some crazy idea in your head that you don't want to be considered a fool or whatever for bringing it out. So I think really we early on sort of like found that trust where we were able to like come out with something that might sound outlandish, and the other party was like responsive and respectfully, and we sort of went through each idea, and that sort of, I think, made it easier for us to sort of bring up something that might otherwise have been sensitive. So I think that's at least something I can recommend going forward, and it's, I mean, of course, it's easy to say that you should be honest with one another, but like being trustful as well, like building up that level of trust if you don't already know one another. I think is really important, because you, like, that idea that you're keeping in your head might just be the one that's like gets the whole thing rolling.
Yeah. And I suppose, like, on that, I'm also like, being fluid, being rigid, but also being super responsive to some of the other things that are coming from your team members and holding space for them, because I think that's a very important key that we often forget, especially because your head is very much in competition mode. I want to win, I want to get this over and done with. I want to get the confidence from this. So I think it's also about, holding space, which could be a challenge, especially if you, like David was, a regionally challenged, or like you are, agency, or, a community, challenge in terms of where your partner sits and where you sit. So I like that. Morten, would you say that it was particularly difficult in that 48 hours to kind of keep your creativity while balancing kind of the stress that comes with, this sharp, short deadline and needing to get things done and over the line and, coming up with a concrete, solid idea, like I say, that you are proud of. Yeah, do you have any tips for just keeping up with that creativity?
I think, like I mentioned previously, like if you can sort of take turns in like working together, but on separate aspects of the campaign, that's a way to sort of keep the momentum going. We also took like inspiration sessions, like when we were like low on energy, we would make some coffee, and then like we would sort of each present like a campaign that we sort of felt had something to offer, and then use that as something like as both a break and inspiration, and then to sort of use that energy to crack on after we finished our coffee, to sort of, because I think it's important to take breaks, and if you go for a walk just to get some air and stuff, so you can sort of maintain the energy even though you're not like in production mode necessarily.
Yeah, I like that, because I think it's when you get tasked with something like this, and again with that time constraint of 48 hours, you want to knock it out of the park and you want to sit at your laptop. But the thing is, like, you need some fresh air, you need inspiration from elsewhere, you need to kind of go and seek for that creativity, because we all know, working within this communication space, it's not as easy just to sit somewhere and be like, oh, I'm typing away. You need so many other things. And I mean, the silliest things can spark, the best ideas. So getting out in nature and not being too overtly serious about this, allowing space for the ideas that come from it, allowing yourself to think up some ridiculous kind of ideas, and troubleshoot it as best as you can with those around you, and as particularly with your partner. I think that's quite key. David, what would you say in terms of having any tips for maintaining creativity? Was there anything you and your partner did in terms of wanting to keep kind of that ideas or ideation flowing?
I feel like if I had heard from Morten last year, that would have been really great, because of the whole swapping. Swapping would have been really, really good to maintain creativity. I have to admit, we kind of powered through, right? Like, in terms of just there were blocks, and then we just pushed. That was just me and my partner, in the sense that when we were coming up with creative ideas and we were under the cosh, we kind of went with the yes and mentality. So it was like idea, and then what? Idea, and then what? Until we ideated ourselves out of ideas. And then kind of, I think what we did was we took that, and then we just kind of, whatever we had, and just kind of narrowed it down to the things that made sense. Like you said, things can just be ridiculous when you keep going. But it was really good in the sense that we ended up coming up with something that was concise but very full. We really were able to go multi-channel, multi-issue campaign, because of the tactic that we had. Again, it's a hit or miss. It's not a recommended, because some people won't be able to go through with that. But I think with our personalities and the way that we were able to do things, we complemented each other in the sense of just keep going. And then one day, when you see, I think we were just motivated by the clock as well. When you see just how much time is left, then you're like, okay, let's come back to square one with what we have, and let's narrow it down. So it really worked on our behalf.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's so important that people are kind of seeing the differences, in Morten and in your and Zara's kind of interaction, because there'll be a lot of different personalities and backgrounds and everything else, and that will come with its own host of challenges. So people must be ready to kind of conquer and complete no matter what. If you want to, if your eyes are set on winning, this round of the qualifiers, you will push on, you will push through no matter what, not forgetting to take some breaks and to take some time out and to turn things on its head. David, would you say or rather, as the winners would now kind of go on to the world's competition, how does that experience differ from the qualifier? And is there any kind of tips and tricks that you have in terms of preparing for that? And if there's anything that you and Zara in particular did that you could share, that would be great.
I think the one thing that we took into the world competition was, I think so the first thing that we were, I guess, maybe surprised by, it kind of goes back to the first question, but like, it was obviously, it was bigger. This was a lot more than we were used to, or that we had seen before. Yeah. That was good in the sense, because we kind of did this. We, of course, we had learnings from the previous thing, but we kind of did use the same approach to go forward with it. And I think the fruit, or the evidence of how much we had grown from the previous stage, was that we kind of handled it by ourselves. We didn't really need as many hands in the broth as we did before. We're confident in our abilities. We're able to come up with really, really solid ideas without doing as much of what we like, as much cooking as before. So it was really good in that sense. We were able to take that confidence. We were able to take that experience. Um, I think it's an aspect of trust in that partner, and just understanding that you are good at what you're doing, and just kind of going along with that. It does help, and it's very effective in knowing that you can do, even at a bigger stage and with a bigger task that you've been
Yeah.
given.
And I suppose what it also does is it brings you and your partner together, and because you go through, the qualifiers and then you go to worlds, it kind of helps build that relationship. And so that's why there's that level of trust introduced. That's why you feel more confident, because you kind of start to know this partner that you are kind of working with. Morten, would you say it was a lot alike for you and Sophie in terms of moving from qualifiers to worlds?
It was a bit different in Denmark. We didn't have a qualifier in that sense. We were sort of like, each net agency could nominate one, and then the trade organization would then put together the team. So we didn't have the qualifier to sort of like get all our get to know each other and all that stuff. But I think one of the things we did spend a lot of time on, or like kept an eye on, was because none of us had done like any global campaigns before, so we were very we kept an eye on that. We needed to, like, the idea needed to be able to work like across the globe, and not just in little Denmark in Scandinavia, where life is one way, and then like it had to be able to, like in Brazil or in South Africa or in Asia, it had to work there. So we really focused on like finding the aspects that the target audience sort of shared across geography, and that was like a key element for us in the World Cup, I'd say.
That's awesome. And I think just to round it off, because I know that one of the reasons why these competitions in particular are so popular is because of, getting to meet the people that work in your space. What was that like for both of you? Morten, did you foster lifelong connections or make new friends, or, is there anything that you can impart that you kind of took away from your time at Worlds?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it really, like, it gives you like a global network of not just youth around around the world who've in the same industry. Also, like being the winner, we were able to apply and join the ICCO World Cup, or the ICCO NextGen board, where I'm currently the co-chair, which again has given you like friendships and a broader network across the globe. So that was. I think that was like an important part for me, or something that's really been how would you say, made a lot of sense, because you get a different perspective on things, and get to know what sort of takes place in the other regions, and
Yeah.
how people work differently and similarly, whether they're in Africa, Europe, or Asia, or whatever.
Yeah, I think that aligns a lot with, my mandate or my role on sitting on the NextGen Africa board, it's you get to meet these people from all walks of life and all different experiences, but you get to make friends for life. And we often say, South Africa is a very small little region in terms of our communication subset, so we often work with each other. I don't ever want to burn bridges, but the most important thing for me about sitting on these boards and making the connections that I do is moving the needle for communications, regardless of where I sit, what I do. It was important for me to kind of live up to a higher something. And so I love that is something that you pull from, your time at the World Cup. David, would you say for you, there's lifelong friendships, there was, lifelong memories? Did you learn, it's PR, not ER? What were any of the kind of things that you so cherish or value from that time at Worlds?
No, that line, PR not ER, is like the number one used line here in the office. But I would say it's very interesting. I unfortunately I didn't win. We came second, which is pretty good. But I mean, we weren't able to go into the same. I think it was happening in Turkey during our year, so that would have been amazing. But I think my learnings from especially the World's experience was seeing some of the other ideas in terms of after it's done and then they put it on the website. It was really great to see the different presentations and how people approach and attack these ideas. It was really inspirational to see other people from other walks of life, from other cultures, and how they approach PR. It's a really great exercise in this global village that we live in of learning from others. It's really great to have that experience. Yeah.
And amazing to have seen your work also be on that stage with all of these people, right? If anything, you take a lot of value and confidence from that because, your work was good enough to sit on a stage like that, or sit on a subset like that. So irregardless, reasons to be proud. And again, reasons why people should still join the qualifiers, even if they don't feel too particularly strong about something, it's experience, it's confidence building, it's relationships, long lasting relationships. It's potentially, some brief or campaign ideas that you can hide in your back pocket and, switch up for a different client that you have later down the line. And I think that's all so important about this. I think it's a brilliant time to kind of, work or flex that PR or communications muscle and, keep at it. And if this is something that you kind of want to reach its completion in terms of going to World, I think that today was a brilliant kind of introduction to that, especially with today being the last day for people to kind of sign up to join the PR qualifiers for this year or for next year, this year. Yeah. Any last or final remarks, Morten and David, before we hop off? Yeah, I suppose it's just a good luck to everybody who is thinking of entering. I think, again, today is the last day, and if you've been sitting on your haunches and worried about not being confident enough, not being able to do this, if today will teach you anything, it's neither David nor Morten actually had that going into it, but you do it and you build the confidence as you go along. Thank you so much for taking out the time to join us this afternoon. And Morten, I don't know what time of the day it is on your side of the world, but thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, that's it from me. I know that there's no questions. I've checked the Q&A, but if any additional questions come through to us, David and Morten, would you guys at all mind if we just popped a little note your way, just in case of, the people with the experience of the qualifiers in the Worlds? That's awesome.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Have a phenomenal day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.